Talk English.
Gen Z says, understood the assignment. Gen Alpha says skibidi. Gen Z says no cap. But Gen Alpha says riz. And somehow, Gen Z, the generation that feels like they literally just arrived on the scene, is now the older generation.
Yeah, it is a really harsh reality check for a lot of 20-somethings.
Yeah.
You blink, and suddenly the teenagers who set every global internet trend are staring at their phones asking, wait, what does this new word even mean?
It's wild how fast that changing of the guard happens. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, our mission is to break down this generational language gap in English youth slang.
Right, because the internet culture just moves at the speed of light.
Exactly. So here on Real Talk English, we're looking at a fascinating linguistic breakdown of Gen Z versus Gen Alpha vocabulary. We're going to decode both generations' language, figure out where they diverge, and really understand what to expect as Gen Alpha completely takes over social media.
And I think especially if you are an advanced English learner trying to make sense of what native speakers are saying online, this is your master key. Both groups are actively conversing right now on the exact same platforms, but using completely different dictionaries.
I mean, I genuinely want to figure out what half my social media feed actually means without secretly Googling it. So let's unpack this. Who are we actually talking about when we draw this line in the sand?
Okay, so let's lay out the timelines. Gen Z refers to people born roughly between 1997 and 2012.
Okay, so looking at the landscape today in 2025, we're talking about a demographic aged, 13 to 28?
Yeah, exactly. And then we have Gen Alpha. These are the kids born from 2013 to the present. So they are ages 0 to 12 right now.
Wow, okay, so the absolute oldest are literally just entering high school.
Right. And to understand why these two generations sound so fundamentally different, you have to look at what shaped their brains, their digital DNA.
Okay, what does that mean exactly?
Well, for Gen Z, their slang was forged on platforms like Vine, early TikTok, and Twitter. It was heavily influenced by AAVE, that's African American Vernacular English, and it was all built around community and performance.
So Gen Z basically built the modern social media landscape. They're the architects.
Yes. But Gen Alpha's digital DNA is an entirely different beast. I mean, they didn't grow up trying to compress a joke into a 6-second Vine. They grew up wandering around in video games like Roblox and Minecraft.
Oh, right. And just endless hours of YouTube?
Endless YouTube. And getting fed these algorithmically randomized, hyper-stimulating short-form videos. It's a much more chaotic digital upbringing.
So wait, does that mean Gen Z is essentially functioning as the adults in the room on social media now?
Effectively, yes. Which is terrifying for a 24-year-old who still feels like a kid.
Yeah.
Gen Alpha's language is actively startling to Gen Z. We are watching them experience the classic, kids these days phenomenon for the very first time.
That is deeply ironic and honestly a little funny. So let's look at the current status of Gen Z vocabulary. Because if they are the adults in the room, their language has actually become pretty structured.
Right. There are several Gen Z terms that have essentially crossed the threshold into just being modern mainstream English. You hear them in corporate offices now.
Yeah, like no cap, which just functions purely as no lie or I'm being serious.
Exactly. Or phrases like understood the assignment, meaning someone did exactly what was needed. They nailed the expectations perfectly.
And then there's it's giving, like usually followed by a noun or an adjective, right?
They're like, oh, it's giving 1990s rom-com.
Oh.
Or it's giving desperation. It's this highly efficient way of saying something possesses a specific vibe.
I love that one. And era, like saying you are in your healing era or your villain era. It frames your life like a season of a TV show.
Or bet is a quick confirmation. But, language has a life cycle. What's just as telling are the Gen Z words that are fading out.
Oh, totally. Like yeet or lit.
Yeah, exactly. If someone says a party is lit today, they're almost certainly saying it is a deadpan joke.
Yeah.
And even words like slay or Dalek, greatest of all time, they feel slightly dated now. They're aging up.
So what's the underlying thread here? What is Gen Z's cultural signature?
What's fascinating is that Gen Z's language is a very specific, deliberate blend of irony, sincerity, and profound self-awareness.
Well, wait, let me push back on that. Some of this sounds like it could just be narcissism. How is it profound self-awareness?
You get that.
Yeah.
But think about the environment they grew up in. They are the most surveilled generation in history. So to use a phrase like understood the assignment, you have to be constantly analyzing your own role and how you are perceived by a digital audience.
Oh, I see. You're constantly observing yourself living your own life.
Right. It requires a massive level of meta-awareness. Their slang is essentially a coping mechanism for being on camera 24/7.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though. If Gen Z is using language to hyper-analyze their place in the world, what happens when a generation grows up not analyzing the world, but just being aggressively bombarded by it?
You get the wildly different world of Gen Alpha slang.
Exactly. We have to decode this absurdity, and we have to start with the absolute elephant in the room, skibidi.
Skibidi. Yes, we cannot talk about Gen Alpha without addressing the toilet in the room.
I genuinely need you to explain the mechanics of this to me. Where did this come from?
Okay, so to understand skidi, you have to look at the YouTube lore pipeline. It strictly originates from a viral YouTube series called Skibidi Toilet.
Wait, literally a toilet?
Literally.
Yeah.
The premise is this absurdist animated war between cyborgs and floating singing heads that live inside of toilets.
That sounds like a fever dream. That's pure daddyism for iPads.
It absolutely is. It defies all logic. But it completely captured the Gen Alpha demographic. And the linguistic mechanism is fascinating.
How so? Because it's just a nonsense word.
Right? Well, it broke free from the show and became this general-purpose expressive token. It's a linguistic Swiss Army knife. It can mean cool, it can mean bad, it can be a noun, an adjective, or it can mean absolutely nothing at all, depending entirely on the tone of voice.
That is wild. Okay, so what about the algorithmic randomness pipeline? Like the word Ohio. I see this used as an adjective all the time. Like, oh, that's so Ohio.
Yeah, this stems from internet memes that playfully position the state of Ohio as this weird, glitchy, eldritch horror kind of place.
But why Ohio? Why does geographic absurdity work here?
Because algorithms feed you these disjointed, context-free videos, stripping away the actual context of a mundane Midwestern state and assigning it chaotic properties. It's a meta joke about the randomness of the internet itself.
Okay, so Gen Alpha uses Ohio as an adjective for anything bizarre or slightly embarrassing.
Exactly.
Then there's brain rot and delulu.
Right. So brain rot is almost a self-diagnosis. It refers to content that is hyper-stimulating but mindlessly entertaining, or the mental state of consuming too much of it.
And delulu is just short for delusional, right?
Yeah, but used affectionately. Like she's deluded for thinking she's going to pass without studying, but I respect the confidence.
Okay, we also have to talk about the gaming and streaming pipeline. Words like gyat, spelled G-Y-A-T-T, and NPC behavior.
The streaming pipeline is crucial because it's entirely about speed and volume. Gyat is an exclamation of shock or surprise, usually directed at an attractive person.
Where did that even come from?
It originated in AAVE as a pronunciation of God, but it got mainstreamed for Gen Alpha through hyper-energetic video game streamers. When a chat room is moving at 1,000 messages a minute, slang has to be punchy and loud to stand out.
That makes total sense. And NPC behavior.
So NPC stands for non-player character in a video game. The background characters who just walk in circles and repeat pre-programmed lines.
Right, so calling someone an NPC is an insult. You're saying they're robotic or unthinking.
Exactly. You're saying they have no independent agency.
Okay, don't forget Riz, because that's the one word here that seems to have actually escaped the Gen Alpha containment zone.
Oh, absolutely. Short for charisma. This is the major crossover success story. It means natural charm, especially in a flirting context.
And it's everywhere now.
Yeah, it is completely crossed over from its Gen Alpha origins into full mainstream use by Gen Z and beyond.
Looking at all this, aside from Riz, maybe it feels less like a functional language and more like an inside joke that just got completely out of hand.
Yeah.
I mean, with Gen Z, a slang word communicates a specific thought. But with Gen Alpha, the joke isn't what the word means. The joke is just the sheer ridiculous act of saying the word itself.
That is a really accurate assessment. They are prioritizing the impact of the sound over the definition of the word.
Which brings us to a really specific, highly structured corner of this digital world. We need to talk about the informal internet hierarchy dominating younger Gen Alpha boys, the whole Sigma Alpha Beta framework.
Yes, we are dragging back out some very tired concepts, but with a new twist.
Right, because the alpha is the dominant leader and the beta is the weak subordinate. That's standard early 2000s internet forum stuff.
Exactly. But Gen Alpha popularized this third category, the Sigma.
What exactly is a Sigma? Why is every 12-year-old boy obsessed with being one?
The Sigma is the lone wolf.
Yeah.
In this lore, the Sigma operates entirely independently of the social hierarchy. They don't seek approval from the alphas, and they are quietly dominant. They refuse to play the game at all.
But wait, isn't that just a rebranding of the classic Rebel? Why does that appeal so much to an 11-year-old?
Think about the psychology of middle school. It is the most rigid, inescapable social hierarchy on Earth, and you have zero power. The Sigma identity is the ultimate fantasy for a kid who feels powerless.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it provides a narrative where ignoring the popular kids doesn't make you an outcast. It makes you the most powerful person in the room.
That makes so much sense. And this is deeply tied to that whole ecosystem of grinding and mindset content, right?
Exactly. Grinding means working relentlessly toward a personal goal. And mindset content is all those intense motivational videos about extreme discipline and waking up at 4 a.m.
But, I mean, practically speaking, are these 12-year-olds actually waking up at 4 a.m. to grind?
That is the trickiest part to decode. It is Schrodinger's irony. Sometimes a young boy is watching a Sigma mindset video with deadpan earnestness. Other times, they are using those exact same terms to viciously mock the concept.
And sometimes both at the same time.
Exactly. The line between irony and earnestness practically doesn't exist.
Which perfectly sets up what I think is the most important analytical takeaway of this whole deep dive, the core linguistic difference between the two generations. This is the real aha moment here.
Let's synthesize this, yeah. Because Gen Z slang is precise. It is highly layered and emotionally aware. They use slang to signal incredibly nuanced degrees of feeling.
Right, like saying, I low-key want to go means something fundamentally different than I high-key want to go.
Yes, Gen Z's words have clear, stateable meanings. They show a generation very comfortable with vulnerability and emotional expression.
So their slang is what we would call meaning precise.
Exactly. In linguistics, we'd say Gen Z words are predominantly semantic, meaning they point to a specific definition or concept. You can look up understood the assignment in a dictionary and get a functional definition.
But then you look at Gen Alpha, their slang is absurdist, it is vibe-based, it's totally unfiltered and gaming-influenced. They aren't parsing out emotional nuance, they're going for maximum humor.
Right. Words like skibidi or Ohio are what we call expressive tokens. You don't define them, you just feel them. They carry a volume and a vibe, not a precise meaning.
I love that distinction. It makes me think of it like, okay, Gen Z slang is like a detailed, hyper-realistic painting. You can look closely and see exactly what they're trying to convey about their internal state. But Gen Alpha slang is like taking a giant bucket of neon paint and just splashing it against a brick wall. It's not about fine details. It is entirely about the sudden, jarring impact.
That is a fantastic analogy. It's the difference between writing a carefully constructed poem and just making a really loud, bizarre noise in a quiet room to see how people react. Both are valid communication, but the mechanics are worlds apart.
Okay, practically speaking, let's actually pressure test this. Let's do a quick drill. If we're scrolling the comments section right now, how quickly can we identify the linguistic architecture?
Ooh, I like this. Let's diagnose some slang.
I've got 5 phrases. We'll read them, and you identify if it's Gen Z, Gen Alpha, or mainstream. And if you're listening, see if you can clock the origin before we do. Ready?
I am ready. Hit me.
Round 1. That's so Ohio.
That is pure Gen Alpha. It relies entirely on algorithmic randomness, bizarre, chaotic, vibe-based.
Correct. Round 2. No cap. That was perfect.
That is Gen Z in origin, but at this point, fully mainstream. Very safe, standard semantic meaning.
Yep. Round 3. He has major riz.
Okay, the ultimate bridge word. Gen Alpha origin, but it has officially crossed over into heavy mainstream use. It gained a semantic definition.
Exactly. Round 4, NPC behavior.
This one's interesting. Heavily Gen Alpha, but also used by the younger edge of Gen Z. It's that Twitch gaming pipeline bleeding over.
Perfect. And final round, understood the assignment.
Classic, definitive Gen Z. Highly precise, heavily semantic, deeply self-aware.
Nailed it. Let's do a really quick vocab recap just to lock the learning in for everyone. We've got Gen Z, the digital architects born roughly 1997 to 2012, focused on semantics.
And Gen Alpha, the chaotic newcomers born from 2013 on, focused on expressive vibes.
We have Riz, which is natural charisma, the Sigma, the independent lone wolf who ignores the social hierarchy, and NPC, the non-player character, meaning someone acting robotic.
Perfectly summarized.
So what does this all mean? We started out talking about how fast language moves and how easy it is to feel left behind. But zooming out, it is genuinely thrilling to watch language mutate in real time like this.
It really is. It leaves me with a final thought that kind of builds on everything we've unpacked today.
Oh, I'd love to hear it.
Well, if Gen Z's language was shaped by the social connectivity of platforms like TikTok and Gen Alpha's is shaped by the absurd, isolated gaming worlds of Roblox and YouTube, What will the next generation's language look like?
Oh, wow. That is a massive question.
Right, because the generation that comes after Alpha will likely have artificial intelligence as a primary conversational partner from birth. Will human slang have to become even more absurd just to prove we aren't machines?
Wait, really? Like, a language AI can't understand?
Exactly. Will teenagers invent a language that AI specifically cannot parse just to maintain a purely human space?
That is an incredible point. The splash of neon paint might literally become the only way to prove you're not an algorithm. A linguistic CAPI-TCHA, I absolutely love that.
A wild thing to think about.
It really is. Well, if you are listening, now it is your turn. We want to hear from you. What Gen Z or Gen Alpha word do you find yourself using the most, and when did you first hear it? Drop it in the comments.
Just remember, if your answer is skibidi, we will know exactly how chaotic your personal vibe is.
Absolutely. And if you're new here, subscribe so you don't miss next week's deep dive. Until then, keep analyzing those splashy neon paints of language. Catch you next time.